Hey, Snap Flash fam! With the explosion of social media, the spread of misinformation has become a huge issue. Can social media influencers really fight back against fake news? And how can you, as a content creator, be a part of the solution? Ink Center recently hosted a 2-day workshop aimed at empowering social media content creators and online editors to tackle misinformation head-on. The workshop brought together some heavyweights in the field, with the likes of Zenzela Ndebele, Director of the Center for Innovation and Technology, and Lifakane Nare from Fact Check Zimbabwe leading the charge. A content creator, Mfo Keoapile, as well as Kalaboga Dihutso, moderated the discussion shortly after the workshop, having a panel discussion on the role of social media and influencers in fighting misinformation. As online platforms continue to grow, so does the responsibility of those who create content. Whether you're influencing a small community or reaching millions, the accuracy of what you share matters more than ever. This panel discussion is set to give you the tools and strategies to become a warrior against misinformation. So Snapflash fam, are you ready to step up your game and make a real impact? Let's get into this discussion and see how we can all be part of the solution.
It's ideal that I start with Zenzela Ndebele, and they probably could start off by differentiating for us social media content creators vis-a-vis influencers. Is there a difference? How do you understand them? What are they to you? What is your understanding of this phenomenon?
I just couldn't hear. My apologies. Okay. I think. Okay. I find that there is really not a big difference between someone who calls themselves a content creator and someone who calls themselves an influencer. But my own understanding, I think the influencer part comes mainly from Instagram, where we have people who are hired by brands to push a certain agenda or a certain product. You are maybe contracted by a beauty company that produces cosmetics to advertise on their behalf, and we've gone to an extent where even like in Zimbabwe, telecoms companies also secretly engage people that they think that they influence or followers to talk good about them. So you'll be speaking good about the product without necessarily declaring that you're being paid by that company. Then when it comes to content creators, these are people who create content, be it on TikTok, on social media, even on WhatsApp, and then distribute it online. But there comes a problem where does a journalist view themselves as an influencer? Or does the journalist identifies himself as a content creator? Because I tend to believe that these terms are used by sometimes people who are not trained journalists, and they identify themselves as content creators or influencers. Because if you are a journalist, your job is to create content. So why would you want to specifically call yourself a content creator? Because by nature, that's what you do, you create content. So of late, we have seen the emergence of influencers. The reason why I like influencers to a certain extent is because they are worried about the product that they produce and the reach, where it goes. The people actually view the content that they are producing. So they're so obsessed about the reach, the likes, the comments. And if someone doesn't get the comments for the product that they've done, they will fast. They will really get thin, spend days not eating, wondering what has happened. But for journalists, I have guys in the newsroom, sometimes someone writes a story, then I ask them, but why didn't you add ABC in the story? They tell you that my job ends the moment I send my story to the editor. The story is not mine, it belongs to the editor. So why don't you talk to the editor? So this is why I think personally going forward, at some point I will employ influencers and then train them how to do journalism, because they are more hungry for success. They are worried about. And even when we were passing comments in the morning, when the pictures were being taken, how come the government is just taking pictures in a hurry? If it was an influencer, he was going to be more careful, because we were worried about the quality of the pictures that were being taken. So
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. But one wonders then, isn't there a risk of sacrificing a credible journalism for the aesthetics of an influencer? I mean, where do you find the balance in that instance? Because you say you'd rather have an influencer than train them in journalism. At what risk, really?
Yeah, the challenge with influencers mainly becomes when they don't have no idea about media ethics and they have no boundaries. So the encouragement to privacy, doing the harm. In journalism, we say we should practice no harm concept. Don't harm the people. Always protect your sources. But I don't think influencers really worry much about that. Yesterday we talked about people who get to accidents and take pictures of someone who just died or someone who's burning in a car, because for them what matters are the views and not how people are going to take that. So there is a risk with influencers when it comes to ethics, but I guess it's not yet out of control. You can. Unfortunately, they are not old dogs, so you can teach a young dog new tricks.
The realities of journalism, not just in Africa, but in Botswana specifically, an influencer, to what extent can they really be free? Let's talk about investigative journalism. Can they provide information that might otherwise irritate the powers that be?
Well, the challenge with influencers is that if they really don't know the tricks of the game, they might find themselves in danger. In cases where governments are not happy with the stuff that they do. But sometimes I like the naivety of people who don't know how terrible governments can be, because they do everything just out of being naive, and it's a risk. They can win, they can sink. But sometimes the warrior is seen by his scars. Then that is the good warrior. So journalism is a contact sport. Once in a while, get arrested, come back, tell us the story.
Anyway, we move on to what you just give us your views on it really when it comes to the role of social media influencers, and of course, feel free to respond to some of the assertions that have been made by Rendebe.
My thinking is that influencers really they act upon what is given to them. They don't have content. They don't have content that is biased, or they don't create any content. They act upon what is handed to them in instruction. They act upon instruction. So I think that's the difference between influencers and creative and content creators. Those people they normally come up with content creators. They normally come up with new innovative ways or ideas and put them out there for your appreciation and for your investigations and stuff like that. And then for a journalist, now growing up, I understood that the journalists don't anything very important. You don't take news, because it is important. So that's the difference. Now that's the difference that I see personally. Influencers will see a news accident, and somebody can hire them, maybe a car manufacturer. They can hire them to just that message is like, so his role would be to put, I'm just giving an example as Mercedes, his role would be to put Mercedes in the best light possible. A content creator will see that accident, and sometimes they play around with the things, make jokes about it, or maybe make it light, try to unbutton the load or something like that, and get people to actually become part of that and have ownership over that incident. But a journalist's role is to come and report about there was an accident here, it involved this and this and this and this. So that's my take on the whole concept.
But to what extent would you say the content creators and influencers, especially influencers, present a danger to journalism, either traditional or mainstream? Is there convention
I wouldn't say presented danger as much, because if they have the tenacity to be influencers and content creators, I think they can be taught. They can be taught the media ethics. They can be taught media values. Through teaching, that's when you can reach more people and maybe bring out better content, bring out better stories.
How do you think they end up becoming influencers, especially influencers? How do they end up becoming influencers? How do they get to 100,000 followers? How do they get to 20,000 followers, 280,000 followers? How do they get there?
In most cases, beauty sells. So, most of these influencers that I've seen are very fine specimens. So you know that beauty sells. Some of them, maybe they do have certain, let's say, talents. Like maybe I'll give a friend of mine this example, Juju Vine. He's a funny guy. So people relate to his jokes because he tells jokes about things that we all know, but people haven't been doing. But he tells them in a specific way. That's when you get more followers.
But doesn't then that mean the end of serious journalism, as you could call it, because we just want to make jokes about everything? Yet again, the question I asked earlier, does it then not present a danger to journalism? Are we not getting excited and bringing in entertainment as opposed to actually dealing with news?
All of us have a role to play in this system. Some people, like I'm one of those people who, if you go
always clowning around, even on serious issues. I always get a lot of perspectives from different perspectives of people about how I approach the subject. At the end, I end up learning something because somebody will take that thing but we all have a role, you know. There are some people who just believe in cold hard facts. And most people, if you live for the past few years, because like Twitter, and they used to have 420 characters. Those things, they really reduced our attention span when it comes to reading all these long articles and stuff like that. So a lot of people, they don't have time to read and analyze serious stories. But if you present it in a more approachable way to them, more relatable way to them.
But isn't the risk that when you truncate information, you're actually misinforming? Because the information won't come out in its entirety.
But there's that risk. So that's where training comes in.
But what do we train them for? They are entertainers. They are not journalists. I'm trying to find middle ground there. I want you to give me the middle ground. Where there's journalism, there's proper media work, and there's entertainment that you're talking about, and there's the truncating of information, but it still needs to be accurate.
The thing that we train people on is deliver. Message deliver. It should be precise, it should be accurate. But as long as you precise, accurate information delivered, I think you can get them to it.
Mr. Paul, thank you very much for the invitation. We can go over to Nari. I did say that right? Yes. And I think as you address this particular topic, I'd be very interested in how we deal with influencers and misinformation, especially when it comes to fact checking. I do believe, I don't know if it was Zimbabwe, it was Uganda, where an influencer had to apologize, and I think at some point got arrested. A very beautiful one, as it says. They tend to be easy on the eye. How do we bring this up? How do we? Do you really see a link between influencers, especially when it comes to misinformation? You fact check an influencer, you're going to be labeled a hater. So I just need to give you an opportunity to just lay out the case, looking at that particular perspective.
Thank you so much. I think the issue here is that it might be easier for us as fact checkers because we tend to fact check everyone, as long as what they say is a claim that is fact checked. So the issue around journalists and influencers and social media content producers for me is that journalists have got a certain code of conduct and ethical behavior that we expect of them. If they are going to tell us that they are professionals, then there is a certain way that they have to conduct themselves and do their work. and they're not entertainers. They might give information in an entertaining way, but they are not entertainers. They are there to inform the public. They are there to give us information that we can use to make decisions about our lives. Entertainers, on the other hand, are accountable only to themselves and to the audiences that they entertain. They need to keep the jokes coming. It doesn't matter whose expense the jokes are made. So for me, the social media content creators are not journalists. They're not producing content like news. They might also be producing skits. They're also making funny videos. They are poking fun at other people. They're creating content. The influencers, on the other hand, they're using the influence that they've gained to make us change our minds, to make us subscribe or ascribe to the things that are being paid to make us believe in. So what they are selling, I think what I would say they have in common with the newspapers and the mainstream media is that everybody is selling us. They are selling us, the audiences, to advertisers. Because a newspaper really traditionally wasn't making money from selling the paper. Because how much money can you make from selling a paper for a dollar? The newspaper was supposed to make money from advertising revenue. And what is it that they are selling to the advertisers? They are selling their audiences. So the stories are there as a means to an end. We're informing the public. When we inform the public, then they come and read our paper because we inform them in the best way. Then when they come and read our papers, we can go to the advertiser and say, we've got 10,000 readers who read or buy our paper every day. So if you want to go and get your information or your product out there, advertise on our paper because they come for our stories. It's the same thing that the influencer is doing. He's saying to them, I've got 100,000 followers. How they got those followers is not the advertiser's problem. Sometimes they can be as outrageous as they want to be. As long as it brings the eyes to the advertiser's product, the advertiser is happy. And the question now is, should journalists be falling into the trap of trying to become influencers? At what cost to the profession? I think that's the question. So for me, when it comes to misinformation, content producers, as long as what they're saying is not being presented as news, is being presented as entertainment, then we've got no right to be fact checking them. Because if they're coming and telling you these are jokes, this is not news, these are skits, then there's no issue around misinformation. The problem comes when they begin to sell their jokes as factual news, or where they become to overlap their roles into that of journalism, where they're now going to come and start telling us so and so is the best person to vote for. So the such and such is the best product to buy. And when they're beginning to mislead people, then we come in to fact check them. Because now they are taking their craft and presenting it as factual pieces of information. And if it's not, then we are going to fact check them and say, no, this is not true. This product is not the best on the market based on the ABCD. This politician does not do what you're saying they do. So then it becomes part of the information ecosystem in your picture.
You bring in a very important conversation of journalists as influencers or social media creators. At what point do journalists have a responsibility in that regard? For example, in Botswana, we've got what is called celebrity journalists. I don't know whether the phenomenon replicates itself elsewhere in Africa, but I do know it's a bit of a phenomenon in Botswana. You do have journalists who've got a huge following here. Where do we place them? Are they influencers? Are they creators? Are they journalists? And do they have personal capacity, say if they work for a mainstream media house? What is the situation there? Where do we draw the line? How do we demarcate all this?
I think it's up to their employers. For instance, you'll find that major newsrooms will have policies on how their journalists conduct themselves, even on social media. So if you're going out and taking a position, is it your own personal perspective as an influencer? How is that affecting your work now as a mainstream media person? So you find that most of this, in Zimbabwe at least, most of the what we would call, I guess, the celebrity journalists are not attached to any media house. And it's all saying that they end up being accountable only to themselves. 1 minute they're saying something, you confront them, they're like, no, I'm saying this because I'm a journalist, I'm privileged to, this is my job to say these things. Then one day they're being activists and they're selling a product, like, but how are you doing this? No, because I'm an influencer, this is my private account. So the lines become blurred. But if you are a journalist who's working for an organization, as a journalist, I think there are some lines that you've got no business crossing. So you find, for instance, with fact checking, I was mentioning earlier that we are accredited by the International Fact Checking Network. One of the things that the principles that are binding is that we have to be non-partisan and transparent. And it also means you cannot be seen to be supporting any brand, any political party. And our employees are also not allowed to go on social media in their personal capacities and say they support so and so or support this brand. Because what happens the day we have to fact check that person and you've already said you support them, you love them, you support their brand. So this is for us, that's the line that shouldn't be crossed. If you want to be considered neutral, a journalist who's got ethical standards, then there are certain lines that you can be crossing into influencing, into being a celebrity. I don't even know. I get all these terms. We've got journalists, then now we've got celebrity journalists and citizen journalists. Are they still journalists? I don't know. I find it confusing, but maybe it's because I'm old school. I trained and practiced over 22 years ago when I got into this field. And back then, I've got journalists to ask me, so if you didn't have phones, how did you get your interviews? Then I'll tell them, we used to go to the minister's office and wait outside his door until you came. And they don't understand this because you just pick up your phone, you ask them, or you follow them on Twitter and whatever they say becomes news. But how do you begin to verify that? You've had instances in Zimbabwe where a spokesperson writes something on their personal page, and then the newspapers take it as news. And then they tell you, no, that wasn't true. I was just pulling my friend's leg, they knew it was a job. Why didn't you call me? Because that's what journalism is. It's verification. And that's exactly what social media content creators and influencers is for. It's not about verification.
And that is why now we get back to this particular topic. Is it realistic that they can be partners in combating misinformation?
Yes. In the sense that if you want to give out information that's factual, then it needs to be true and verified. So if you are going to go out and trade into and cross over into news, then you need to be factual. Because there's a difference between fiction and fact and news. So if you are going to just produce your skills, if you are going in fact, like when we do cartoons on our papers, if we have the editorial page where you get your cartoons, it's understood that this is editorialized. It's not factual. It's how we interpret facts and how we view certain things that are happening. That's why it's under our editorial page. So influencers have got all the freedom to do that. You can go out there, take our news, and give us your take on it. You put your spin on it. Tell us it's satire, so that we know it's satire. So every time we come to it, you know, oh, this is the guy who makes jokes about real stuff, so we need to take it seriously. That's okay. But once you tell us this is news, then you have to follow the rules of engagement when it comes to news writing. Because you cannot say it's news and want to do it in a way that is not news. What makes news news?
Thank you. I think we're about to give the audience an opportunity to comment. But first, I would like to come back to Mr. Ndebele for a very specific reason, because you did talk about them needing to be trained, and that we are very open to the idea of training influencers. I'd love to hear that again. Have you heard what your colleagues and fellow panelists have said concerning that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a journalist and I'm an entrepreneur, so I always love to see people who are able to get audiences, because I'm after the audiences. So anyone can bring an audience will bring money. So I believe that if you have people who are, my frustration right now with the people that I call journalists and that I work with is that if you look at maybe in Zimbabwe, except for a few exceptions, journalists are not really active on social media. So the people who are very active on social media or who have the numbers on social media are non-practicing journalists, or they're not journalists themselves. So a journalist will write a story and not share their own story on Twitter. And not, I've had a situation in that site where there's a story that has been posted on a side page, and there's only one retweet, and that retweet was mine. But I have 24 people who are on Twitter and they can't even retweet their own stuff. And I think that would be completely different if you had influencers. Because an influencer, at the end of the day, they're called an influencer because they have the audience. And they want to keep telling people. You know, an influencer will tweet 5 times in an hour, different things. A journalist will tweet once in 3 months. And sometimes most of them, they forget their passwords. And they're always having new Twitter handles. So where we are going, I think influencers have a role to play when it comes to, because what we are talking about is the distribution of content online. I mean, if I'm moving with AI and having a non-human being reading stories, they need to be easier to train an influencer. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether you wanted to respond to that. Feel free, and then of course, Mr. Gulebi will also give you a chance to respond.
It's very interesting because as Zenzele says he's an entrepreneur and a journalist. So he's making the two work together and work for him. I think for me the challenge might be, or the issue might be that the influencer is this busy because this is how he makes his money. He makes his money by getting the audiences so that he can sell the audiences to the people who are paying. The journalist, on the other hand, is being paid by Zenzele to write the story and not to disseminate it. So if you take that same influencer into your newsroom and say, you know what, I'm going to pay you $1,000 just to write the story, they won't find any reason to be tweeting that story 5 times because they are now being paid for just sitting here and doing the story. But now they have to tweet and keep the audience coming. So maybe if Zenzele then took the journalist and said, you know what, I'm paying you not just for writing the story, but for getting it also out there, then the journalist might start tweeting the story 5 times because they have to get it out there for Zenzele to pay them.
I think it's a fair point. I don't advertise my show. I'm not paid to do it. I simply get on radio when I do my thing. I don't get paid to do that. I think you need to respond to that as well.
The reasons why we don't have dinosaurs today is because they couldn't adapt to change. And I see a lot of dinosaurs in the media industry. Because, I mean, we have changed our model. Initially, we used to have journalists coming, getting paid a month, and they just don't care how many stories they write. It was not working. Then, because they would write press statements. Then we then said, we are going to pay you for the story that you have written. And they'll still go out and attend the church conference and write a story. So now we have been saying, we are going to pay you for a story that you have brought and we have approved it. And we are slowly moving to a situation where we're saying, we are going to pay you for a story that has been read. So if I were to work with influencers today, definitely they will not be on a salary. We will agree, guys, this is the product. Our target is $5,000 a month. I get 60%, you get 40% of what you bring in. Whether they look for adverts or they go and do whatever, the money that we get a month, we share 60-40.
Okay, I have something small to say here. I think you mentioned something about celebrity journalists, street journalists. I think there's a new term being thrown around also, like media ecosystems. These ecosystems that they feed in. Ecosystems are complex. There are little extremities that they feed into each other. So be warned. You're going to have more than influencers, more than content creators in the near future. We're going to spring a couple of other more terms and ways to make money. Also, I believe that online medias, maybe we can move forward by maybe promoting media literacy, teaching people what media does, and teaching each other how to report effectively and factually. Also, amplifying accurate information. We need to, things like fact-based reporting, social media engagement. We need to be able to get our facts straight, and so that the next person sees this. If I mention something, if I write about something, somebody else can even just fact check themselves and say, oh no, this is the truth. If you amplify on that, teach people that the truth is the way forward. Maybe we can train them, as he says.
Thank you very much to the panel. I think I'll give you an opportunity now to comment so the conversation.
If you're passionate about the truth and want to stay updated on how to fight misinformation, be sure to subscribe to Snap Flash, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for more insightful discussions like this one. Thanks for tuning in. Keep questioning, keep learning, and stay informed with Snap Flash.